I'm going to articulate a position, and then I want you either to, you'll either be assigned to defend or attack the position. All right. True or false? Listen. The position is, care and growth implies democratizing the workplace. Now, why is it that we should explore this notion? We just kind of... Care and growth is a model for what makes power legitimate. The job of the big one for the little one in any relationship with power is care and growth. There's yet another contending model for what makes power legitimate, which is called democracy. People say, well, that's illegitimate, it's not democratic. Now, if care and growth means power makes power legitimate, democracy makes power legitimate, then these two things have to relate to each other. So, or do they or don't they?
Okay, well, it's our fundamental right as South Africans to work in a democratic workplace. Okay, we looked at it, if we look at care and growth, we took care. What is care? Well, someone's got to listen. They've got to feel, everyone's got to feel they're being listened to. Therefore, everyone has to have the opportunity to have their say in the matter, which is democracy. So, yes, if we're going to have a caring workplace, then it's got to be democratic. Then on the growth side of it, how does one really grow? You grow by learning. How do you learn? Well, you learn best through making mistakes. If you don't have a say in how decisions are made, the mistake is always going to be someone else's, and you're never going to learn from it. So in order to learn and grow, we have to be involved in that process of decision making, and therefore it's got to be democratic. And that's bottom line where we stood.
Fantastic, thank you.
No argument.
Dad?
Are we doing? Where do you go?
Who's going to argue? Who's going to go?
Oh, I can argue. Okay.
Well, they've thrown the ball very courageous off the ball, and you walk back in your
I'll probably stumble with my wording in this, but I'd like to argue the subtle difference between a care and growth management style, which is everyone has a say but not necessarily a vote. Okay, so inherently it's nice to think that caring and growing is democratic, but actually it's not. We created a nice analogy here of a child that it would be very responsible to give a child total democracy when growing up in the family. Yes, darling, you're welcome at 6. If you would like to smoke, you're welcome to smoke. But if you...
Here's the keys to the gun safe.
Yeah. So that's it. And practically, in caring and growing for the people that that report to you, you will always, in caring and growing, you will always let them have a say. You will always hear them out. But if you get, if the answer is yes or no, if the question is yes, are you for or against, if you get a 70% no, but you know from your position that it's in their best interest for the direction to be yes, you still have that ability to override it. So in that case, it's inherently not democratic. As you know, democracy is if 70 or 80% of the country votes ANC. ANC is the government or the ruling government. So that would be my clumsy way of arguing it's not democratic.
No, it's not all clumsy. It's very eloquent. Thank you.
What about the 70% of people that said no? How do you handle it afterwards? Once you make a decision to say
yes. That's once again part of care and growth, feedback.
And I think the leader must also be trusted by the employees, that if there is a decision that was made, they must trust the leader and go with the decision that was made.
See, on the child parenting, there's 2 parents that democratically they could outvote the child anyway.
So what happened to that?
Triplets?
Let next time I have something to say.
You said in a democratic system we all live to the same rules basically, and it's important that in a working environment that we live to the same values and rules. Once you've got the same values and rules, you can actually apply the motto of care and grow. Because if you don't have the same value, you can care and grow as much as you like, it won't have any effect. In an autocratic system, you've got a one-way street whereby it's only one way, it's downwards, and there's no engagement of people, and that's critical according to us. So it's important in the democratic system to engage the people, to make them feel valuable, and then create a better working place for them.
Right. And you?
Okay. Actually what we came up with is that you could create an environment at work where you actually, because you've got this the growth and care in place, etc., you get to know the workers so well and what they need that you actually start making decisions for them as to what they need and how best you can care for them and how best you can grow them, and they actually don't have or need to have a say in how you actually take care of them. And you can also create an environment where there's other factors that you, or nice to have that you give them, like you give them gyms and you give them canteens, and you create this marvelous environment for them where they're caring and growing. And again, they don't need to have a say because they're all happy and to come to work, etc., and they don't have a say in their environment.
That makes them feel valuable, so they don't care about not having a say.
But if you don't have a say, how do you know that they're happy?
Well, because they're happy.
Because you interact, you're assuming.
Yeah, we
It's your opinion whether they're happy or not.
No, you can still find out whether they're happy or not without actually giving them a say.
Yeah.
You will be happy. Just tell us.
Ask them.
Okay, that is. Right. Now, I mean, again, folks, the same question that we had last time. Could you get behind the argument you were asked to defend? You couldn't.
Could you get behind the argument?
Could you get behind the argument?
Yeah.
So they're just being difficult.
We're not convincing enough to our own team. We're not convincing enough to our own team.
You guys
No, they don't think
to
we're
apply to one. You're still asking us at the end which one we're going.
No, it's, I mean, the implication is obviously that, you know, maybe it's a bit of a red herring debate, that there's truth to both sides of the argument. And I think that is true. You know, from one point of view, you can say care and growth is about democracy because, you know, if you look at the difference between the Dave and Eugene transaction, insofar as Eugene is allowed choice, which Dave isn't allowed, there's a more democratic feel to that engagement. So yes, you can say care and growth is about democracy. The problem with this democratic notion is a little bit in definitions, and you know, you didn't go into the definitions issue, but one of the implications of the term is kind of like equality. Democracy is not democracy without this egalitarian feel to it, and that's where the danger in the notion lies. You know? Because you know, it's not about making everybody equal overnight. If you think about, for instance, the you know, what that's meant, what that means in terms of our argument, we're saying what makes power legitimate is, you know, the job of the big one for the little one is the care and growth of the little one. You know, what do you have to assume about the big one before the big one's even in the position to do this? It's obvious, folks. Okay. Well, that is big. Do you understand? I mean, can you believe this is the case? So, what is a legitimate relationship of power presuppose? Equality or inequality? Inequality. Not even in the relationship between the coach and the athlete can you have equality. A precondition for the relationship to work is that the athlete is subordinate to the critical instruction of the coach, otherwise the coach can't do his job. If the athlete is going to be in the position to want to argue back every time the coach is, how can the coach do anything? You know? In other words, a precondition for a legitimate relationship of power is not equality, it is inequality. And if you, in good sort of modern democratic fashion, want to make everything equal overnight, you're playing with fire. Because can you do this overnight? So how else can you get equality overnight?
Breakdown.
This is like the democratization of the classroom in this country. It's no longer the teachers that donor the lighties like they did when we were lighties. Now it's the lighties that donor the teachers. You know? And then we're surprised that we have an educational system that produces the equivalent of functionally literate people at the end of the process. 12 years of school, the guy can't read, he can't make his sums. That's quality. So you can't say that care and growth equals democracy, because it cannot be that. It's not possible. You know? In fact, the problem with the whole democratic notion is that it's too much of a behavior-based kind of approach to the problem. We said, this person can behave in compulsive, read for that autocratic, and persuasive, read for that democratic ways. This person can do exactly the same. You know, this person can also behave in very autocratic and compulsive ways. Like this fairness thing. Dave works for Nikki. Dave has just done something which is horrendous, completely unacceptable, just shocking. Nikki's going to deal with Dave. Perfectly, consistently with care and growth correctly. Is Nikki's behavior going to be autocratic or democratic? Autocratic. She's going to say, listen, Bill, things in life are not acceptable. Come here, let me help you. Quite legitimately, you know. So there's room for both autocratic and democratic behavior in a perfectly legitimate relationship. In fact, if we go back to our parenting metaphor, let's say I've got a 9-month-old child who's beginning to walk. It's early starter, 9 months. He stood up a few times, he's fallen a few times, and he hurts himself, so Akshay, poor Lighty. So the next time the Lighty gets up, I go over there and I take his hand. What am I trying to do with the hand? So in whose interest am I doing it? In him. I'm getting lumbago. It's not for me, it's for him. However, is this not also an autocratic imposition of control? It's exactly what it is, because I'm not negotiating with him, I'm taking the child's hand in his interest. Now what's going to happen to me is that a really nice person who probably went to a very good liberal university will come up behind me, whisper in my ear and say, you awful man. You autocrat. What do you mean? You have to democratize. So I go pink with embarrassment. No, pink. I let go of the hand of the Lighty and I go stand as far away as I can. How easily is the Lighty going to walk now? So do you see that in terms of the intention to empower, the absolute and democratic suspension of control is disabling. I may then just as well say to you, little shit, you must always hold my hand, because then he'll never walk on his own either. So in terms of the intention to empower, the absolute and democratic suspension of control and the absolute and autocratic imposition of control are exactly the same sentence, because they produce disablement. If I'm sincere about trying to enable this child, what skill am I trying to enable? Walking. Now, how do I know the child can walk?
When you let go.
I have to let go, but where do I stand? Not on the other side of it. Do you understand? Because growth, by its nature, is an incremental process. Nobody's born 21 years old with a leather jacket and teeth. That it takes you 21 years of getting there. It would be very convenient, but it's not. You know. In other words, empowerment does not require an absolute and democratic suspension of control. It requires an incremental suspension of control, because growth is by increments. That's our third axiom.